And welcome back to Wall Tactics. We're here to talk about the rise of the green tide, or in this case, the downfall. So today, we're going to be looking at the stats overall, like we always do, going over the winning list, which actually this weekend, Orks had several, despite the title. And so we're going to go over those lists. Like to give some context as for the win path, as I deem win path is very important, and some comments that I actually got from some of the players who actually were at the events and getting stuck in, lads. So if you haven't been here yet, just know we go over these lists, not because I care for you to mimic them or to copy, but because it overall opens our minds, gives us a good understanding of each other and what the consensuses are among our peers, as we all can understand that everybody thinks and plays differently in different metas. So just take it as you will. Hopefully it helps you with your way of thinking and your list building. So with that being said, let's get stuck in, lads. But before we get stuck in with that, I'd like to talk about today's sponsor, Baron of Dice. And of course, they were able to provide us with our paint competitions winning dice. So as you can see in the picture, we have our paint competition winners actually showing off their dice and they're winning. So of course, if you haven't checked out Baron of Dice, check them out. 5% discount in the description, because nobody likes taxes, but everybody likes to win. So with that being said, I like to look at the stats. So I'm actually going to start with, this is from Meta Monday. So Orks are sitting at about a 42% win rate overall, which is why the title is said this way, as Orks have been falling for quite a bit from our nice staggering 52% win rate or so, right? This weekend really wasn't all that bad for it to be said, but it was because a few exceptional players, who some we've actually covered before, did well this weekend. But with that being said, I want to say Bully Boyz 44%, Warhorde 42, Dreadmob 42. Finally, Dreadmob coming back and making a rise. Of course, a lot of those people like to make memed lists, but as the meta is shifting and people are trying to find more answers to our very clear weaknesses, it seems like Dreadmob actually finds its way. In some cases, that could be combined arms. And of course, Green Tide with 33%. It's funny because I actually do have a speed wall list I'm going to show today, but because the tournament was such a small player based, it seems like Meta Monday just kind of missed him. Yeah, I still think it's fun to talk about because we already know that's one of the hardest attachments to run. So even if it isn't a small list, it's still 5 rounds and I still want to cover it. Now, what I also like to go over is the Orks, we'll say matchups, factions versus faction, which is something that also people don't like to talk about. Of course, I've heard other people will say, like Art of War, for example, shout out to Sieglers, where he said it's hard to go off the stats because the general 40k player is so tremendously different in skill compared to, for example, him, the 1%, which is clear, 0.001%, which is very clear and obvious. Yet we have to go based off generalities. That's all we can do as people, and people that are logically people as we play Warhammer. Therefore, we go over the numbers, try to get a general understanding. That way, when you go into games, you can go, hey, my Leagues of Voltan player, for example, you can see here, give me a hard time. Is it just me, or is it something that I'm doing here, or is he just exceptional? And you can kind of understand and learn our weaknesses along the way when you really look at our hard matchups. So that being said, as you can see, this is from 622 to 821. About the 8 weeks or so since the data slate changes. Leagues of Voltan, again, 35% win rate as our hardest matchup. But they're fighting right there with our other two very strong competition. Some would even say predator kind of factions, which would be Death Guard and Drakari, as both factions have really, really innate weaknesses to us that I'm sure a lot of you encounter. We're actually going to talk about Drakari today, as it was one of the harder lists that ran into one of our winners of this weekend. Of course, you have Space Wolves, 40%. Us losing Green Tide, us losing Bully Boyz, where we're direct hard counters or strong, viable contenders to Space Wolves and their Thunderwolf cavalry. We've lost that too. That way it becomes hard in that way. Blood Angels just tearing up the scene, and for very similar reasons, as we can all understand, as they would for Space Wolves or any kind of pressure melee army, as the meta benefits that, just not us, because we lack some tools for a little bit. Yeah, you can make it work. You can make it work. Then we have Tyranids with the 41% win rate. I'm strongly in favor of this. Might not be because Tyranids are so strong in the meta, which is why generalities do matter. But it is very much because Tyranids just have a lot of tools into Orks. And it's not necessarily because, we're a bad army. It's just, battle shock and damage 3 and feel no pains and high toughness, hard skirmishing trades is very hard for us to deal with in our points values. Then we have Necrons, Adeptus Custodes, Adeptus Sororitas, and T-Sons, all giving us our run for our money, all very powerful factions for the most part, respectable factions that have it's funny because these have been up and down factions with us since the index. So keep that in mind. All these armies are definitely giving us for a run for money. If you run into any of these, learn them, go through their matchups, learn through their combinations and how they work. And let's talk about some of, how we can go into them, which is why I think win path is very important and why I like to look at our winners. With that being said, let's actually talk about one of this week's winners. Right here, we have my boy, Russell Graham. Whoa, for Russell Graham making an appearance again. And he was at the Bridgerton 40K GT, where he did 5 rounds, going 4-1, putting up a valiant effort even in his loss. So this is one of the people I actually got to talk to a little bit. And shout out to Russell. He's in our Discord. So I actually have some notes from him, and let's look at his list. So Russell Graham did bring the Dread Mob. So a lot of people always wonder what's going on with Dread Mob and if it's a meme, but it can be ran not a meme way. Let's look at this list and some of its strengths. So we have simply 2 big mechs with shock attack guns. Each has an enhancement. One is Finder Goggles, and one is the Smoky Gubbins. A lot of the time, I think you only take Smoky Gubbins simply because you have 15 points left over a lot of the times for this weird attachment. Actually, this list was 1995, so he actually had 20 points left over. He just had to opt in that. Happens to me too. Then you have Ghaz Gultraka. Yes, he did bring Ghaz Gultraka, and he does give his thoughts for that. 2 units of 10 boys, followed by 5 units of Grots. Simply 10-man units, no big bricks. That way he can't give up any Call to Horde. You do have 3 trucks, 3 trucks, 1 5-man unit of Flash Gits, a Gorkanaut, 6-man unit of Killicans, all with rocket launchers, a 10-man unit of Ludas. Both of the Spanners had rockets. He had 2 units of that to accompany his shock attack guns, followed by 2 Meganobs with twin kill saws, followed by 2 5-man units of Storm Boys. Now, let's break this down real quick. Obviously, the big shock attack guns get the Ludas. Get Finder Goggle is an amazing enhancement, and especially for the point cost. God, I love that it's such a cheap point cost. But Ghaz is the real glaring thing here. And something that we've been talking about throughout the weeks is how Orks really benefit, and so do a lot of different armies, but benefit from actually being able to bring combined arms factor. People understand now that Dread Mob is our shooting, quote-unquote, detachment. Of course, we have melee potential in it between our walkers, but all in all, a lot of the strength benefit our shooting, especially with people having, the ability to increase our CP in the middle expenditure in the middle of the table now way more easily, meaning you kind of want to sit back and pop your CP off, as it's so vital to Orks. Therefore, what is Ghaz doing on this list? Ghaz is bringing the meat, he's bringing the pain, and he's bringing the mid-table presence. And that's very much how Russell used him. Russell used him as, I'm threatening with the mid-table. You come into the mid-table, I countercharge you, or I put him out there to start contesting for the points. You eventually kill Ghaz. As he said, Ghaz always died. But now you're in the mid-table. Not only that, but you're also on an objective. So you're susceptible to shooting, and you're now playing the trade game with him. And usually, guys, he did say this too, Ghaz does take, usually, right, there's exceptions, more to kill than he's actually worth, even alongside the Meganobs, or take so much positioning commitment that eventually he can get the advantage out of it. I've tried this. Other great people like my boy Mark Perry, shout out in chat, have tried this. I say you give it a run for you as well, but it definitely helps with those this matchups, those high armor save matchups, things like that, and it gives us the combined arms factor between everything else. What I thought also was interesting as a last thought is how he brought the Gorkanaut as well as Ghaz. As for, I'm not going to bring just one thing for the meat, but I'm going to bring 2. And as we talk about his matchups and how his games went, you'll see how he actually did use the Gorkanaut, in a very advantageous way. And so did he use the Killicans in an advantageous way, which are also 2 contentious units that people choose to bring competitively sometimes, right? So let's look at Russell Graham's path to victory. So for his first game, and like I said, I actually do have some notes from my boy Russell here. Not a ton, but enough. So he went against Chaos Knights in his first game. He had 2 War Dog Stalkers, 5 Brigands, and 6 Carnivores. Now, right off the bat, we all know as Orc players that in the hands of a very capable pilot or in the right mission, Chaos Knights are simply a strong skew that goes well into us because the amount of damage you can bring, the amount of toughness you're contesting, and the amount of OC you're contesting. It's one of those things that if you bounce off one of these Knights as an Orc player, there's a good chance that you lose that unit that's now running to slap. That being said, Russell was worried about this matchup. Yet he said the player he ended up going into was a younger individual, and it ended up being a pretty smooth game where he did score and perform quite well. Yet I give a 94-point win. Yet I will encourage anybody who's watching this or a newer player, when you're going to the GT level, you must become aware that there are certain things like gatekeeper armies and Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, Custodians very much fall into that line of where they might not end up on the podium, but they'll definitely try their best to stop you, especially if you're not prepared for them. They will stat check and skill test you, and that's why you must know their rules and try to get practice games if you can before GTs, because it's very common that that's when you see him. Now, for his second matchup, which this was his one loss where he did put up valiant points, he went against the Drakari. And you've seen earlier, when we did faction versus faction, Drakari is one of those armies that gives us a hard time. A lot of it because a lot of Dark Lances. Yet, in this case, he had other reasons. So we have a Sky Splint Assault Force. He has 2 Archons, one with Night Shroud, one with Spiteful Raider, a Beastmaster. Now, a lot of people from the casual level or whatever it may be don't really know exactly what a Beastmaster is. So it's important that I show you as your fellow war boss. So here is the Drakari Beastmaster. As you can see, you're looking at 4 stat lines here for wounds, saves, leadership, etc. Why that is because this is a very unique unit that you might not be familiar with. It is 7 model unit, and there's different variations of these. There's 3 of the Flocks, 2 of the Chimeras, a Clawed Fiend, and a Beastmaster himself. What's really good about this unit and how it's always used, and Russell did confirm it's how it was used in this game, is that the Beastmaster unit can scout 9 inches, and then they move 12. Therefore, simply going first gives them a great move blocking tool. Now, it's only 105 points for that, guys. So cheaper, 25 more points than Zod himself, just simply a Zod, right? So that's cheap for 7 dudes. And they have little invulns, they're T4, and they have weird wounds. And if you're a skilled player and you're a familiar player, you know that if someone's coming into me with a inconsistent amount of damages, if someone's trying to hit me with all damage 2s, for example, I'm going to not take the damage 2s on the Chimeras first. I'm going to waste them in the Flocks to kind of disperse that additional damage. These guys don't get picked up as easily as you would hope as Orc players. And if they're a T3, it'd be easier. But the fact that they're T4 and they get an invuln just means they're very annoying for that turn 1. Their damage output, all that stuff, isn't that too impressive. They can get off and do a couple damage, but for the most part, almost every game, the Drakari player uses this Beastmaster unit, especially against another melee army or somebody's trying to run them over, to simply get in the way and run and stop them and stop the pressure. And that's something Russell said happened to him in this matchup. So we have Lelix Hethprash and then Urian Rakarth. Not really sure how Urian Rakarth was used. I did pull up her data sheet, as you can see here, benefiting Grotesque and Kronos and such. There aren't really that any on that list. Just the benefit of when it's destroyed, it comes back to life, which is pretty much how it's used on the list. Other than it's feel no pain and getting back up, it's used to just score the secondaries. Other than that, its secondary part of its data sheet didn't even matter. He wasn't trying to heal any of those things because they weren't on the list. So we have 2 units of Kabalites, 1 Witch, 2 Raiders with 4 Venoms, 2 Incubi, 2 Mandrakes, 3 Scourges. So Darklands Central, not including the infiltrators of the Mandrakes and the scouting units of the Beastmaster. Board control, pressure, scoring potential is what this list says and bleeds, and it can beat you up for the infantry units you got just enough. So Russell did say in this matchup, it was tipping point. It was really easy for him to get pinned in his deployment zone and stop him from scoring. He killed most of the army and he pulled off a secret mission, yet he simply didn't come back in points. And that's because you lose, the initiative to take secondaries, which is what I always encourage you as an Orc player, is when you are dying for the points and holding someone back, you must calculate now that they can score a secret mission, so you must stop them from scoring secondaries, which is why you kill secondary units and you delay them, which is in this case kind of what happened to Russell. But he did score really well, which means he was trying and probably didn't give up too many units to be killed, so he could still score a late game. That's how I got a secret mission, but was still a loss. Great, attempt. And the first mission, by the way, was sweeping engagement, terraform with raised banners, which is good for knights, huh? And then the second game, it was tipping point, take and hold, swift action. Now for his game 3, which is search and destroy, purge the foe, fog of war. You guys know purge of 4 can be hard. Purge the foe can be hard for Orcs, guys, right? But in this case, he went into the Grey Knights, which you guys like. I always tell y'all, you got to do your homework if you're going to play against Grey Knights and known to them. And that's one thing he said. He said, I did get good practice into Grey Knights. So he was nice and familiar, right? So we have Brotherhood Librarian, another Brotherhood Librarian, Kaldor Drago, one big brick of Brotherhood Terminators, small 5-man units of Terminators, 3 strike squads, followed by 3 Dread Knights. Played against something of this very similar. You know, it might be just because the whole meta is shifting towards having more infantry and 2-up saves and such. This does pose problems for the Orks. What I do like to say is when you see a Ghaz and you see a Gorkanaut, you go, man, those Terminators are not going to have the same experience that they normally do, just sitting around the table thinking that they can't die in one activation or one, you know, because the whole idea of the Terminator squad is they have an up theory, whereas he's somewhere in here, the Narcisium right here, they can regen people. When you have, and you would put Kaldor Drago on there, get a nice early game 6-inch charge, someone goes to counteract you pick them up. You know, in case you have the shooting units and you have the units that if you position on other parts, if you do it in the correct order of operations, which I've talked about for Grey Knights when you understand them, you can still pull off charges off on them or just dwindle them really poorly and make your moves around the whole table and they're waiting to pop their strat to react to move away from you, and you made all your other positions, right? That's how you have to think about Knights, which is what Russell, he thought he knew how to play into Grey Knights. This is what's very important when you play them. And that's kind of all we'll say of that, because that's what Russell, you know, I think that's very important. You know, that's what he said in, I'm gonna make sure I read his note correctly. He said it was a good experience playing with them. He was able to screen him out, pick him off, and that was he took his opponent's backfield objective with his Gorkanaut. Very important. You know, Grey Knights don't really like to try and contest the mid-table or really any kind of pressure locations with you on the table if you have the ability, like Kaldor Drago, like we said with Ghaz or Gorkanaut, to just stand in front of you, because they're pretty soft if you have the right profiles, which in this case, having a Gorkanaut and Ghaz are the right profiles to kind of keep them from wanting to consistently engage with you, right? If they can bog you down, then they'll just do that. But if not, they're going to play the cagey game. And if they're playing the cagey game, it means you play the cagey game and you screen them and you march up to their home field objective, which I've done myself. There's sometimes when you look at the enemy, and in this case, like he said, it was purge the foe. So he's not going to play their tack for tack. Oh, I'm not going to let you kill all my little things and play that game of I'm going to let you drop in my backfield and then shoot this little thing and then run away. No, he needed to play a game of I screen you, I kill what I can, I stop you from killing what you can, and I take your home field objective so you can't score the primary you need to win the game. So he ended up winning that one. Great job by him, because Grey Knights are a headache. Are a headache sometimes, you know, especially if you don't know their rules. So then we go into his 4th matchup. Make sure yep, there's a 4th matchup where he had, yes, making sure, guys. He had World Eaters. So he has Angron, Lord Invocatus, World Eaters on Juggernaut, Master of Execution, Berserker Glaives. This dude I used to call him Master of Indirect Combat, because he pretty much is like, I'm going to fight first, and I'm going to do Devastating Wounds, and I'm gonna, you know, like he had a bunch of silly wounds. I'm going to reroll the hits and the wounds, and I'm going to precision. Like he had every melee rule where it's like, are you even playing, or are you just kind of getting everything freely given to you? So yeah, I've always just liked that guy. Then we have Jackals. 2 units of Jackals with their sticky objectives. Pretty cool. 1 big unit of Corn Berserkers, usually to escort that Master of Executions, because he wants to blood surge into you and get to nice fights and do all those nice things. It needs to be kept safe because he's a soft body. Then you have 1 Rhino, followed by a bunch of 8-bounds. You have 2 3-man units of 8-bound, followed by 1 small 3-man unit of Exalted 8-bound with a nice big 6-man unit of Exalted 8-bound for that super killing potential. Then you have, of course, the World Eaters spawn, Chaos spawn. Now, I would like to show, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen, but I like to show you the data sheet directly, World Eaters Chaos spawn. So I like that Jack Hapster, shout out to Jack, called this out. And it's funny because I was like, man, I'm the only one getting abused by this stupid thing. World Eater Chaos Spawn is an excellent, you know, Art of War rated it the best unit in 40K, and I'm never going to contest that because it is atrocious how it can have its Feel No Pain, its melee potential D6+2, Strength 6 -2. It can regen model Lost Wounds. So with that being said, and it's T5 with 4 wounds and actually has an armor save and a feel no pain. Something that Orks are like, what? You get an armor save and a feel no pain? Like, what? Like, it's hilarious. Not including they get access to all those strats and the army wide rule. Okay. Which means they can get to a 4 feeling pain instead of a 5. That being said, 65 points. This is what Orks would love, to have another skirmishing type unit. The only thing that gets even relatively close, not from durability, but for point value and not that they can be used in flexibility, or something like a flashgate unit. If you take flashgates and you have them shoot and fight to spawn, there's a chance they can actually kill them. They still cost more, but that's why something like flashgates. And when I say skirmishing unit, that's what you want to think about. Funny how Art of War used the best skirmish unit in all of 40K to call the best unit in 40K, because people know when you can skirmish and win trade ups in points, you win games, especially as a melee army, which is what we significantly lack as Orks. That's why I really wanted to point that out after I heard my boy, or not really my boy, I don't know him, but why I heard a fellow melee person enthusiast say. So, World Leaders are one of those armies that it can go anywhere. So what he sorry, I didn't even after I said the list. What happened with Russell, what he said about this matchup was that he pretty much was murking him with Overwatch. Murking means to kill drastically. With Overwatch, with his Ludas, because obviously he would walk into objectives at some point, and these are a bunch of Marine bodies, even if Exalted 8-bound are still not much better than a Marine body. And of course, they don't have the issue of 2 up armor saves. Only Angron's like that. He said it took him till turn 4 to kill Angron, which is good because then he only comes back once if possible, which he did on turn 5, but he was the only unit left. And he did say that his killer cans were able to rapid ingress near his enemy's home objective, which is what I always say when I mention killer cans. If you're going to use them, they're a good reserve unit, as they're super slow, but they have a huge profile. So it's good to have that pressure, and that's what he did. I'm glad he pulled it off, because I love to run up on someone else's home field objective, especially with something that's killy and good OC and kind of durable like killer cans. Love to see it. Then he went into, and he won that one with the 96-point win. So he's putting up great scores. And then you see in his last game, 76 points win. So he tied his loss with his last win in points. That's how our boy's doing good. Then he goes into his last matchup. Let me say what he actually said about this. I won't mess it up. Oh, interesting. He said, last game versus Ross from Vanguard Tactics. Traded well early on. He had more bodies and more numbers. So turn 3 or 4, he had maxed on primary, and he couldn't catch up. That's why it was a low scoring, though, because primary was a determining, not the necessarily secondaries as much. Now, what I always say is Jakari hate a lot of bodies, and they hit a lot of units unless they have more, right? So we have Artarg Wayleaper, Avatar of Cain, which is getting murked in the Dread Mob, right? Farseer, Skyrunner, and then Fugin, so you can get up and do some shenanigans. 2 wave serpents, Dire Avengers, Fire Dragons, Fire Prism, another Fire Prism, 2 units of Howling Banshees, Shining Spear, minimum size unit, 2 Striking Scorpion units, Swooping Hawks, and then only 1 unit of Warp Spiders. Expensive Warp Spiders, huh? Goodness, they need to be that expensive, though. As you can see here, something like Fire Prism combo. You guys are aware of that. Very good shooting platforms with these Wave Serpents. They're not getting good enough trades on his points here. And even though these are all cheap, remember, these units are susceptible to our Overwatch with Ludus. He has to be scared of that. He has to be scared of trying to deal with Ghaz, just standing there in the middle and tempting the Avatar to come out and either fail to kill Ghaz or just get beat up by Ghaz, or to even just get shot after killing Ghaz. And then again, Ghaz has now actually made a trade to kill. It becomes this kind of game, like he said, where he has too much OC, he has too many bodies, and he was able to just play the big bully game, which is how you should handle Eldar. If you're ever going into Eldar, just know, bully them. Run them over. You literally have to run them down. That's how you deal with them as an org player. As funny as it goes along with the lore, that's actually how high-level players and people should, as an org player, deal with Eldar. Run them down, core them, beat them up. Take the casualties. Even a leftover unit will finish them off, or just have a lot of units. If you lose, it happens. Just have fun murking them and get stuck in. So shout out to our boy Russell Graham for going 4-1 with his Dread Mob. With the show one more time because it's nice. He had 2 Big Mouth Shaka Gat guns. Both had enhancements. One's Gift Finder, 1 Smoky Gubbins. Ghaz Ghoul Thraka, followed by a boatload of Battle Line, being 2 minimum size unit of boys, 5 minimum size units of Gretchen, 3 trucks, a 5-man unit of Flash Kits, Gorkanaut, Killer Cans, 2 units of 10 Ludas, with the Spanners having rockets, simply 2 Meganauts with twin kill saws because you need the see re-rolling wounds. It's not Warhorde, right? You don't take one of each. You're like, nah, I want that re-roll wounds and that 3 AP boy. And then you have the 2 units of Storm Boys, which I'd like to see. So shout out to my boy Russell Graham. Whoa! For the Dread Mob. So now I'll look at chats real quick, see what you guys got to say, because I just got stuck in there real quick right away, boys, didn't I? So shout out to Day One DLC Rocks. Whoa, for becoming a WAAAGH Tactics membership. Thanks, buddy. I like that. Not even gifted. He just straight up joined up. Love that. That's very, thank you. Very generous of you, and I appreciate the support. It helps us greatly. Shout out to my boy Jank the Tank. Whoa, and other guys in chat still doing very, very well with Dread Mob in the local, running 100 plus grats. I like that. It's funny. I ran 100 grats recently too. Whoa, Miss Gomez. All right, let's look at. Remember, guys, this is an open talk, so be sure to say what you got to say. I interact with the chat, and we'll respond to what you have to say. I just like to get between the list that I discussed before I get stuck in chats, because then I'll just get back and forth with y'all forever, right? I'll be too happy. So that being said, let's go into the next war boss that did well this weekend. We have our boy Wayne Jimson. Hopefully I said that right. And now to any KG kits, you can see right there at the top corner, it says 1750 list. So some people might say, oh, 2K, I'm not interested. How about you stay interested? Give me a moment of your time and take it as an opportunity to say, hey, the core is this 1750. What 250 can I add, or what X amount can I add or subtract? That's why I say it's good for us to explore these players and these lists, because if anything, it just gives us a rework of maybe what we're stuck in our thinking, maybe a new way to attack our problems. I'll leave this in thoughts. So not for you to copy, just for you to learn. So we have Wayne Jimison with the 1750 Bully Boyz list. So he called this Goff's Bully. My boy's kicking it back to old school with this and his mentality. We have Ghaz again making his appearance. Funny, before I started this stream, someone in the Discord was like, where's Ghaz good? Answer is everywhere. You can always give him a chance. But he goes, good in Bully Boyz still. We have Ghaz followed by War Boss with Ed Stompa. I think you just take that when you have the points. I've said before where I think Ed Stompa could go. We have 1 unit of battle line, followed by 1 truck, a battle wagon with the fixins. He took the zap gun, and he took the Ard case and Def Roller. Then we have a unit of Deffkoptas. 2 of them had rockets. 1 had the custom Mega Blaster, followed by another Gorkanaut, guys. Another one. 11-man unit of Gretchen, followed by 3 killer cans. What's up, boys? 1 big brick of Mega Knobs to accompany Ghaz. So getting that value out of Ghaz right there. A 10-man unit of Knobs with Power Claws. A 5-man unit of Storm Boys. And a 3-man unit of War Bikers. So real quick, interestingly enough, my gits, I love to see the Gorkanaut again making an appearance. Gorkanaut's just at the right points where I think he's totally fine to be played. We've seen him in a couple of detachments. He really does help and reinforce the killing potential of this list and making you a little bit more tough in a way that's not common. The War Bikers, you may be asking, why not more Storm Boys? Sometimes you simply have the points, but also the Bikers give that little bit more of durability, which with doing secondaries in Nexus, a little bit more survivability, so that 1 knob stays alive with 1 move makes a difference sometimes between doing a secondary or not. So I'm not against it, and I'm not saying it's the new way to play. I'm saying if you have Bikers, don't be so strict that I have to have my Storm Boys. You can put 1 unit of Bikers in there if you don't have enough Storm Boys. It works totally fine. Interesting also is the killer cans. I still think they need to come down in points, even if people do well with them. I'm going to stay stuck on that. But it's really nice to see that they're being used in this way as a skirmishing, right? They're not 6 big brick like we've seen before. Nice little 3-man. Of course, he kept the boys and a knife big battle wagon to transport the knobs so they can still bully, put direct pressure up the mid-table, and get stuck in, not die too quickly. That being said, let's look at his matchups and his win path, because even with 1750, it was a 5 game event, and this was in England for the Throne Skulls GT. Now let's take a look at his win path to my get. And of course, if you say anything you got to say in chat, I'll respond and I'll interact with what you got to say. So his mirror matchup was game 1, where he went into a Warhorde who was rocking Ghazgul Thraka 2. Love that, right? So we have Beast Boss on Squiggle Sword with Ed Whopper's Kill Chopper. pretty much the only person that gains any value from this enhancement anymore. No. Beast Boss still pretty decent, but he's the one who gains the most value from this enhancement now. Then you have Boss Snake Rat, still making his appearance. Ghaz, followed by one simple war boss with super cyborg body. Sounds like my boy Solo. 2 units of boys, followed by 2 trucks, a single Death Dread with Claws, Scorcher, 1 Gretchen, 1 Commando. Ghaz is accompanied with 6 Mega Knobs with a different profiles, some Power Claws, some from Kill Cells. He might have just been doing WYSIWYG, right? A 5-man unit of Knobs with Power Claws, a 3-man unit of Squiggle Boys just to accompany the Devastating Wounds guy, and then 1 unit of Storm Boys. What I would say to this player, because he's one of us, as a fellow Orc player, is you did the right thing by running War Horde and running a list that has a bit of everything. You know, you can see you added a Death Dread, even though you gave him a Scorcher, and, you know, people aren't really running Death Dreads necessarily in War Horde as much anymore, even though you can. And he seems like he just took together things he liked, units, data sheets he liked, and tried to make it work, not necessarily following, you know, like we like to talk about with our archetypes and our list designs and everything. And I think he did a good job with what he had, if this is what he had. And I would not say any of these units are necessarily weak or out of place, besides maybe the Death Dread, like I always say, he's a bit too expensive. That being said, in the Orc on Orc matchup, it goes crazy when they have only 1 WAAAGH and you have 2. Now, what I always bring up to people that are talking about the Orc on Orc mirror matchup, which I think is important, that just to me, what I think is important, hear me out. You guys have to agree on when the WAAAGH is being called and who determines it when and who what first, right? Now, some people would say, as the person going first, you get to dictate when the WAAAGH is being called. Actually, when you look up according to the rules, how GW actually advised for these kind of rules isn't very clear. What they clearly say is roll off for it. They don't say just because you're going first, you get to force the other guy to declare his WAAAGH or not. You know, that's not how it works. I've seen people and I've heard people say it this way. Good players, people that I respect, that say play it this way. When I re-referenced the rule a couple times and looked it up, it very much does indicate that if you're an Orc player and you're with someone and they have another rule, you roll off to dictate whose it is, who gets to declare their WAAAGH first. If someone disagrees, say it in chat now, or say it after and in the comments after, and you get stuck in on it in the Discord. But that's how I advise it, and that's why I say it. Now, the reason I say it is because of this. I say that to say this. When you're going into War Horde or any other Orc detachment and you're Bully Boyz, if you do get to dictate when they declare the WAAAGH, if they have to say it first or not, is very impactful, because if they dictate it first, you can either choose to also do yours defensively if you don't have enough stuff to screen, or B, you can say, oh, you're declaring your WAAAGH, I'm going to screen you now because I'm an Orc player. I know how your WAAAGH works. I'm going to wait. You're going to hit my screens, and then I'm going to WAAAGH twice and run you over. That's why it's very significant when you do this kind of matchup to kind of go through, hey, we should probably roll off for how we're determining who declares the WAAAGH first, so there's not no feel bad moments of how this can go, right? Yeah, I was like, did I just click the wrong person? But no, that was correct. All right, and that's just what I say. Like I said, disagree, say it in the comments or say it now in chat, and we'll elaborate on it. So let's go into his second matchup, which was Chaos Knights. Again, boy, Knights, night check. We're gonna say, guys, if you're gonna go to an event, just know you're gonna see some Knights. Very easy to use them. So we have a Knight Desecrator, followed by a War Dog Night Stalker, 3 Brigands, a Huntsman, 3 Carnivores. Even for 1750, that's a lot of meat. A lot of the time when you're playing into this matchup, calling the WAAAGH, even in a defensive manner, is very important in getting your trades. When you're going into these things, your skill as an individual Orc player is tested and limited. Not limited, but strained by this kind of matchup, because they have all the tools to beat you. They have the OC, they have the toughness, they have the invulns. I guess not in shooting only, but they have the tools to deal with you, multi-damage, all these kind of things. That's where something like Ghaz really helps, because they don't really have a good way of getting around that 2-up invuln with like a precision, unless they're using their big boy. And they couldn't tank shock you, but your Mega Knobs being encased and having 2 turns of their field knob pains means they can prolong that, and you're just killing and chopping through whatever's getting in to try to delay you. So I love to see that he ran over Knights with that. Feels good to run over Knights. It really does. With an 87-point win. For his third matchup, he goes into that Chaos Knights again? Oh no, yes, Chaos Knights again. Oof, my boy's dealing with all the knights. He has a Knights Crastus Lancer, a Knight Rampager, two War Dog Stalkers. That's probably the most character knights I've ever seen. Followed by 2 units of Brigands, and then allied units with a Skull Taker and a Bloodletter. Very unusual list. I'm not going to act like I comprehend that too well. I'm just appreciating that my boy took the win there with a 79-point win. It's the same thing we just talked about Knights. I don't think I need to elaborate too deeply on that, especially when it's different. Then we have Hypercrypt Necrons as his 4th game. Something that we're all still familiar with. He says, how to train your pet Void Dragon. That's what he called the list. So he has Catan Shard of the Void Dragon, an Overlord, a Scorpek Lord, a unit of Immortals, a 10-man, 1 unit of Canoptic Doomstalker. Interesting, it's only 1. A Reanimator, a unit of Heavy Destroyers, a unit of Lich Guard, a Monolith, and the big brick of Scorpek Destroyers. One thing I would say that's interestingly missing from this Hypercrypt list is the very small, cheap, individual unit of destroyers to score them their secondaries. All of these things have value that you can run over. And he's very much trying to say, I can stand here with the Scorpek and fight you and charge you, or with the Monolith, or even with these Lich Guard, right? You see they have shields. They're trying to be durable. Having something like a Gorkanaut and Ghaz, a 10-man unit of boys with power claws with 2 units of lethal WAAAGH, decimates Necrons. They hate volume. They hate lethals. They hate pretty much the profiles Orks bring. You know how we hate some units with their profiles. Necrons hate us because what they hate is to be one-shot through pure volume in melee, which is exactly what we're good at doing into them, right? And taking the middle of the table and everything like that. So I'm really happy to see that. A lot of the time, guys playing Hypercrypt, knowing that they're going to deep strike, screening them properly, forcing them to now put the Monolith in the mid-table and getting ran down by Ghaz is exactly how you want that game to go. And then last, but in this case, the least amount of scoring, our boy went into Black Templars, where he finally took his loss. And of course, Black Templars are all over the meta, all over the meta, just raining havoc. So we have the Righteous Crusaders. We have a Castellan, followed by Captain Grimaldus, High Marshal Helbrick, which actually I felt like showing you just because it's been a while since we showed Mr. Helbrick and his potential. But like I always tell when you were Orc players, you should pay attention. You always hear about how Black Templars are so good and hit so hard. Having critical 5+ is a part of those reasons for that, my boys. And that's exactly what High Marshal Helbrick brings to this unit. He accentuates their melee potential. And at the start of the fight phase, he delivers mortal wounds. He has a crazy profile of damage 3 and a bunch of 12 damage 1 attacks at 6-3, which is freaking awesome as an individual hit for him, but not great for us. And a weird little infantry weapon with devastating wounds on the 4+, which is kind of cool, actually, for that can mess you up. Very respectable data sheet that you should be aware of. But really, all of these units bring that kind of killing potential. Yeah, you just have to be aware of that. We have Assault Intercessor Squad, Primaris Crusader Squad. Ooh. Big old thick boy unit, boy, right? We've seen that. What was it at the World Teams tournament where they brought like 100 of Black Templar Crusaders? It's interesting that the mobs are starting to make their comeback. Hey, GW, it might seems like you can bring the boys in too back. Just kidding. So we have Assault Intercessor with Jump Pack, followed by a Brick unit of Eradicators, and Inceptor unit with Plasma, only 3 of them, a Land Raider Redeemer, followed by a Fat unit of Sword Brethren. It's interesting because they actually brought a Thunder Hammer. A lot of the time you just bring the Lightning Claws, you give yourself +1 damage, and you reroll it with link rolls. Might be they just want even more damage with all the damage reduction in the meta and such that they decided that the Thunder Hammers are worth it. Which is why we bring Ghaz. Or in this case, as we've been showing this weekend, where the Orcs have shown the most individual success as for placings, we're seeing Ghaz and the Gorkanaut. And part of me reason for believing that is they bring the AP and the high damage that we kind of need and some kill toughness, right? And then 1 unit of scouts. In this game, it really much always comes down to what the Orcs is. 1, where you're feeling a pain to go when this kind of army can actually get the initiative, put so much damage into you. 2, when did you call a wand? Did you scream? But 3, the fact that Ghaz is like 500 points or whatever because you have the Ghaz plus his 6 mega knobs means that having a unit like the the Sword Brethren that can annihilate Ghaz, even somewhat chew through the feel no pain in that case. Followed by having Romualdus being able to choose to try to precision Makari. I'm sorry, not Romualdus. High Marshal Helbricht, even with his little pistol to precision Makari, stuff like that can lead to you losing these kind of games. And I don't know how he lost it, as Orks can beat Black Templars, and we actually have the dual tools for it. But just know, even simple things like not knowing High Marshal Helbricht can anti-infantry 4+ precision out right here. Anti-infantry 4+. Oh no, he can't precision. Oh, sorry, he can precision melee. Sorry, but not shooting. Okay, so we got to keep that in timeline. But it's important that you understand that you can do devastating. Sorry, I misread that. Oops. Sorry, I almost misspoke. Ignore what I just said 4 seconds ago. But these kind of knowing that they do have infantry 4+ and anti, and having characters that can put a boatload of punches into you. If you do precision Makari, having this kind of profile of 12 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2, well, in this case, they're still strength 6, so it's on 4s and such like that, but you get critical 5+, and then they can be sustained, means you can just put a volume of punches into Makari, and he only needs to fail 1. And you can do it with simply one character. One character that can get up to 12 attacks and then precision out Makari will delete the game. Will delete that thing. You lose your banner. You lose your info on Ghaz. Ghaz now gets picked up by the rest of the Sword Brother unit. There's so many ways that this kind of goes. So that being said, still want to say shout out. And sorry when I said he can get precision, like, dude, I was overthinking something else. But shout out to him. Did lose that game. Ended up losing that one. The player he lost to in the beginning, 2nd place. So shout out to our boy Wayne Jimison for his 1750 Bully Boyz list, which had Ghazghul, a war boss, 1 unit of boys, 1 truck, 1 thick battle wagon, that Ard case, knife, random 3 Deffkoptas, a Gorkanaut, only 1 unit of Gretchen, Killicans, big brick of Mega Knobs, followed a big brick of Knobs with Power Claws, 5-man unit of Storm Boys, and a War Biker unit. Love that this has good AP. Love that this has volume of damage and multi-damage. As though it looks quite random and hodgepodge in some cases, I do like some of the tools and assets he had in this. And I think it's good food for thought, especially if you're on the way up to try to develop your list. Maybe you only have 17.5 points. Maybe you have some weird collection of, I still have my Deffkoptas and I kind of want to use them because I don't have enough Storm Boys to deep strike. All very valid. And that's why I wanted to show something like this. Be creative, be unique, and you can still do well. Be yourself, guys, because that's what it takes to be a proper war boss. Among all these things that I show you and among everything we talk about, at the end of the day, Orks are a very much learning curve army that reflects you and your individual skill a lot of the times, because they have the melee pressure potential that Nexus really requires and benefits from. They have the volume, which volume is a quality in itself, and they have great OC and other ways to play the mission. Orks always have a potential to win. It's just how much can we reach their ceiling as the pilot is sometimes what gets you your results. That's why it's good you play the way you want to play and the units you want to use, because it gets the most out of you. So shout out to Wayne Jimison. Whoa! We're going 4-1. Now I'll look at chat real quick before I get into the next one. So we have 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships by ECOP. Whoa, for my boy. Haven't seen you in a while yet. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for being generous. And we appreciate it, dude. I mean, your gifted memberships help us with our paint competitions, with our gifts and our giveaways, everything like that. And we're expanding. Trust me, we're going to make more reasons, incentives for you to be members. So thank you very much, ECOP, to all you who help us greatly. Then we have another one. Definitely an unusual Chaos Knight list. I guess he really felt he needed the tech into dev wounds with the Skull Taker. He was slaps against characters too with the damage 3 precision, rerolling everything. Okay, thank you. That was a good one. I didn't notice what the Skull Taker did. Because that list just popped out of nowhere. That makes more sense though. So a Skull Taker is an attempt to try to precision and re-roll everything. Ooh, that could be devastating if you don't do that. Good shout out there to anybody covering this. So Skull Taker, killing your characters. Pretty much that's what I meant, right? I meant him when I said High Marshal Helbricht. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for that, chat. See, this is why this is a live thing, guys, because I can get things wrong, and it's better that someone can address me and talk to me directly right away rather than after the video is already published and a million things have been said and I've already made a whole bunch of conjectures. So let's take a look at the next player up, David Lundekist. Gosh, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm gonna give you that name. Hopefully you don't be offended. Okay, so we have the speed mob list that we're gonna go over. This player went 4-1, losing 1 game. These were the ITC, 20-point max, point differentials. So it's different to us Americans. This wasn't a lot of players. That's why you didn't see it in the stats I showed earlier of Meta Monday, because this is, and I'm not sure. I don't want to click that. What Sweden? Didn't have that many players. I don't know what country this is. I shouldn't have said Sweden. I'm sorry. Whatever this country is. Normally I click it beforehand. Yeah, but it's WITC scoring. So nonetheless, I wanted to show it because I thought, hey, showing the speed mob with some success is what's more interesting, right? Not all of us go to GTs anyways. Some of us are just trying to play fun RTT lists or just trying to make our dread mob work. So let's take a look at how David's Ludicrous dread speed mob list worked, or Cult of Speed. So we have Deffkilla Wartrike with Squig Hog tires, followed by Deffkilla Wartrike with Waz Blasta and a War Boss with Faster Than Use. One truck, followed by one DACA jet. My boy actually brought the DACA jet, guys. Can we just have a moment of happiness for the DACA jet actually making an appearance? A lot of people are like, what can I do with my copter? I had a since 8th edition. My boy actually brought it out and did some work. I'm sure, of course, people will say, well, it's a smaller event. Well, RTT, then it could work if it can work at a 5-round, GT type event or GT similar. So this is more of the voluminous plane. It's more of, each attack scores the critical. It does have a rapid fire and sustain. It is twin link, doesn't have great AP. A lot of the time, I think this is very much because you can see he doesn't have the mech to try to get a +1 to win. Could be that he just has the positioning. He deemed that it was just enough points at 135. If you're out here, David, let us know how you use that DACA jet, as I'm sure a lot of us would be very curious as to what it did or didn't do for you. Then we have the very necessary, very important 3 max unit of Deffkoptas. All of them had 6 rockets. 3 units of Gretchen, minimum size units. I do like that. I think 1 can work. 2 feels way better for screening. 3 gives you the option of, I can still screen. I can stop melee pressure. I can reserve one of these grout units. I can stop my whole backfield from all these 3-inch deep strikes or not 3-inch deep strikes, but I can stop my whole backfield, reduce the 3-inch deep strike capability, and significantly completely diminish the 9-inch deep strike capability. So I'm not against 3 grouts. It just comes down to I got the points. I find the key spot like 2. 1 unit of commandos. I did a speed wall list video recently, and I brought up the commandos in that one too. I'm saying it again, boys. I think it's because you just need the commandos for the fact that you need the board positioning. You have huge bases. You're easy to get move blocked. And they're really the only ones that can stop to do what they do, because a scout simply can he still has to deploy in your deployment zone, still getting in your way. He still can get denied by infiltrator, still getting in your way. So having an infiltrator unit really makes it so you can position, stage, and let your reserves come in, let your other stuff position and deploy safely. 3 unit of Megatrack scrap jets. In this case, I always talk about skirmishes. Skirmishes are units that get in little fights for sub 100 and we'll say 25-point values, right? Looking for trades where I kill this thing, it's equal or more points than me, or I kill this thing and then of equivalent points and something else kills me that costs more points, I'm able to now kill that thing. These are what we mean with trades. That's how I look at Megatrack scrap jets. What makes them better for that is that they actually have the capability to do the mortal wounds, and they have the capability to spike damage because they have a bunch of damage 3. He brought 3 of those. And like I'll talk about that in a second. Then we have the knobs with Faster Than Use. I always say, because you need the respect. You just need it, my boys. If you're I'm not going to bring any melee or punching. People are going to just stat check you in the mid table and just not respect you, of course. And I think when you're really killing something tough in Cult of Speed, even if you bring all the Deffkoptas and you pop all the straps, 2 different units with straps, with sustain and lethal, still not reliably killing stuff that's high toughness with 2-up armor saves. You need that combined arms factor, like from knobs, to come up and finish it off. Interesting to me was only 2 units of war bikers, and 1 is not even a full-size max unit with the Deffkilla Wartrikes. Found that super interesting. I think Waz Blast is a way better enhancement than Squig Hog Tire, so I'm subject to believe that the 3-man unit was for the Squig Hog Tire. Don't know that for a fact. Could be the other way. But I like to see this list. And when I did my video, just did it before I seen any of this, I like that it kind of reinforced a lot of things that we discussed and we're starting to understand as a community about the Cult of Speed. Like I always say, this channel isn't about me, my necessarily direct glory, or I'm Art of War, never listen to me. It's about that I'm adding and putting together the generalizations, the consensus of all the competitive orc players in the community, the casuals, my own understanding, information studying I do, and then I bring you this. And this is showing we're on the right page, boys. Cult of Speed has its way to play. You got to stick to a couple fundamentals here, like our boy did, which you need some punching, you need some skirmishing, you need some infiltrators a lot of the time. The plane was the really thing that was interesting to me, right? Plane was interesting. I love that. So let's take a look at his win path. And of course, you can see our boy did good. 220s right off the bat. Goodness. Let's look at what he had to chew up with the Cult of Speed. Starting off with Drakari with the Splints Assault. Ooh, okay. I like the speed. Okay, the speed into one of our hard matchups. We have Archon with the Night Shroud. Another Archon. A Beastmaster. There we go, boys. You know, luckily, Deffkoptas could fly over them to kind of position anyways. But your bikers, your buggies, completely getting dissed by the Beastmasters, like we spoke about with other orc lists, where the Beastmaster is a bunch of different cheap, models and data sheets, and can really dwindle you as an orc player and hold you in your deployment zone with their scouting and their, quick movement. Show everybody again in case you missed it. 12-inch movement, 9-inch scout, a bunch of different ablative wounds. They have 3 wound model, 5 wound model, different 2-man wound models, and a couple of 3-man wound models. Very annoying. Toughness 4. They actually have invulns. Great for move blocking, as you can see here that I displayed. Got to be aware of that. And that's why infiltrators are so important when you're running something like a Cult of Speed. Simply, this comes up, you're not moving half your army. We have Lilith Hellsbrach, a Cabalite warrior squad, a witch unit, followed by 2 raiders, 4 venoms, a Chronos, a unit of incubi, 2 mandrakes, reavers, and then 3 scourges, 1 talos, and a death jester. What I will say here is I love that the fact that Cult of Speed was able to combat one of our crappy, annoying matchups, and that very much does come into play of, if you can kill Drakari transports, guys, these dedicated transports, if you have the tools on your list and the capability to kill them on your list, and you actually have the moments to kill them, set yourself up to kill them, this is how you got a Drakari army. Immediately go for the transports and kill them, which in this case, you actually have the correct units, because Deffkoptas have actual profiles into Venoms and Raiders because they're not overly our toughness, so they wound a little better. They have the volume to get chewed up by even our buggies can get lucky. War bikers can even get lucky with twin linked and only 1 AP to damage and chip these. Our arm units all have enough speed to kind of position and move. If they do, they're annoying. I'm going to get closer to you. You can react and move with this army, with our army. You can pop invulns when they decide I'm going to put these lances into your Deffkopters. Pop 4 up invuln. All these guys are 4 wounds. You're going to lose damage if you don't drop at least a 4 on every one of those D6 damages, or I think there's D6 plus 1 or something for the damage, but you get what I'm saying. That you now start a blading wound. So sure, he might wound you with 4 dark lances. Pop that 4 up invuln. You make a couple invulns. He rolls his damage. Only kills 1 Deffkopta. That's exactly how that can actually swing the game too. Love to see that. Of course, infiltrators help with the mandrakes too. So surprisingly enough, like we talked about with Dread Mob, here again with Cult of Speed, they actually have tools to counter some of our harder matchups. Not going to say it's always going to happen. Definitely in the hands of the right pilot, though. And my boy was definitely the right pilot to put up 20 points on that list. Then we have this second matchup. The Blood Angels, or in this case, the Blondie Angels. That's what he called them. We have a Gladius Task Force. Orcs definitely like, it's not Orcs. Blood Angels definitely like to be Sons of Sanguinius going into Orcs. We have Commander Dante, La Martis, a Sanguinary Priest with a jump pack. I'm not going to go too much over this combo because we know that this actually got released today, their new rules, so we're just going to hit this real quick. Intercessors, Assault Intercessors with jump pack. We got 3 of those units. A Ball Predator, love Ball Predators, as in that's a cool data sheet for the point cost. I'd love if we had something similar like that. Not has to be exactly the same. I'm just saying they have all of this. If you're not familiar with the Ball Predator, pretty much a little transport, T11, all that. Not a real transport, but about the size. It has a bunch of flamers on it. It can advance and shoot. Therefore, it drops his Flamestorm cannon and its heavy flamers. Its flamethrower cannon's essentially a Land Raider to Redeemer cannon to an extent. and it's only 125 points. Very cool. A Death Company unit with jump packs, brick, only 3 Eradicators, Gladiator Lancers, which is 2 of them, Sanguinary Guard, and Vanguards with jump packs. And, you know, it's interesting how this actually can compete with the Blood Angels list. And a lot of it is because, one, they have to worry about our wall, since a lot of our stuff is actually fast. We can actually get to them in a different way. 2, they actually still have a lot of soft marine bodies. The fact that we want to shoot and reactive moves means that they start dying in ways that they don't really want to and losing droves of these melee units. Plus, if you haven't paid attention, guys, a lot of these Cult of Speed units aren't that expensive compared to something like, look at a Deffkoptas unit, 200 points. That's our main, backbone of this list. Totally way cheaper than Sanguinary Guard for 310 plus whatever character you send to them. So sure, Sanguinary Guard might run up and punch out your Deffkoptas. That's still not a good trade. They're almost 400 points for that unit with their character. You half of that. You can actually get trades out of the speed wall and stuff like this Gladiator Lancer, unless it's hitting something like a Megatrack Scrapjet, which is half of its point cost, and it does it consistently to pick them all up, which is not necessarily gonna be able to, because you can kind of hide the Megatrack Scrapjet. And even if he does kill, it's half the point. Not having good trades here, not killing Deffkoptas efficiently here, not killing bikers really that well either, not good targets again. And it's just funny to see that. And we've seen this with other, with the one WCC list, I think it was, or ATC list of Orc players, they overcame Blood Angels as well. Plus, normally these jump pack Marines, when they're Sons of Sanguinius, they can get up to that strength 6 that really will help kind of in some of these things. They're not getting up to strength 6. They're strength 4. They're not killing our bikers well. They're hoping to get spike mortal wounds and punch out our buggy. And then you still have the good old reliable big old unit of knobs to run up and punch out one of these problematic units that they also have to respect. Not to mention, like I said, the Blood Angel player knows that you have WAAAGH, advance and charge. You're in a transport. Only his Lancers are going to pop that reliably, and then he has to charge you with that. So he has to set it up. You know that everything's coming to stop that one unit in this matchup, how important that War Boss unit is faster than you in this moment, because you can let them know, I haven't WAAAGhed yet, but I can move this truck, get out, advance, and then charge you while you're staged up behind that building in the middle objective, staged for the middle objective. That's why having a faster than you War Boss melee potential unit so important when you're running Cult of Speed, because it gains the respect. And a lot of the time for Cult of Speed, which catches people off guard too, that I discussed in the video, is your WAAAGH is more of a threat than the actual source of your success as a Cult of Speed. You don't want to WAAAGH turn 1 or 2 necessarily. You want to turn 3, turn 4. You want to really take advantage of the invuln. You really want the enemy to be scared of you pressuring them. And as you're you running them down with leap pads and punching them out, as they're staging and getting scared of you punching them, you're really just board positioning, staging. And then when they decide to come out and kill you, you have enough cheapness, enough durability, and you now then move from the wall to survive, hold them back on primary, hopefully have scored great yourself as well. And that's kind of how you deal with these really killy elite kind of armies, which is funny that he ended up putting a 20 into what people would consider a very strong army in the Blood Angels. So that's why I'm all that to say that I'm sure the faster than you unit plus all the other units in conjunction really set the pace for that matchup. Got to really be smart with your wall in that matchup. Then for his third matchup, which he did lose, he went into good old-fashioned World Eaters. World Eaters is one of those matches you got to be careful for when you're going to Cult of Speed. So we have Angron, just Angron. I think it's cool. A unit of Jackal, followed by 3 units of basic 8-bound, followed by 3 units of Exalted 8-bound. All of these units are simple 3-man units. And then 3 units of Chaos Spawn and just 2 models, followed by 3 Forge Fiends with Ectoplasma Cannons. As much as I don't really like World Eaters that much, personally, this is the kind of army that I would like to play as a World Eater player, and that I actually find to be very, very threatening, because we know, like I always mention, combined arms is a huge factor. Here's their good value shooting right here units. Okay. Also, here's their good trading units and skirmishes. bunch of 65-point units with feel no pains and regenerating you stuff and some potential. I'm pretty sure they have OC. Let's pull up their data sheet. Boom, 1 OC and respawning itself with respectable strength 6, which Orks hate to see, and volume of punches. Not to mention, as you can see, they get the data sheet ability. They also get access to all their strats. It becomes outrageous. Again, now they have the best skirmishing unit. Let's look again. Now, if you look at all their value units, all these 8-bound are not worth a significant amount of points anymore to where you kill them, you got the army. You have to deal with all of these small 3-man unit staging that can punch the crap out of you and cover distance drastically. Not to mention, this little unit of 8-bound, for example, can stand within range for their aura of rerolling ones to give rerolling ones to this exalted 8-bound. So even though it's a 3-man unit, it's getting its buffs from other units and other units of 8-bound on the field and each other. So they're overlapping each other with how they support each other, right? These guys, the World Eaters, Forge Fiends can pop a transport, for example. These guys can run them down. Chaos Spawns can bait you early game. And then Angron to just play the straight up, I'm going to bully you and hope Angron comes back. And then last but not least, a good old fashioned sticky objective from the Jackals. That's why I actually like this list, which I'm not surprised he was actually able to overcome our boys of Kult of Speed, because all of these 8-bound units are very small. So they're going to be very hard for us to hide and shoot. They actually have point to contest. One exalted 8-bound unit can actually go into a unit of Deffkoptas and feel good, not only to kill them and trade with them, but once they kill them, that when they get killed in return, it's not an overcost, just like a normal 8-bound. And to delay, all of these World Eater Chaos Spawns would be super annoying, as like Art of War said, the most valuable unit of 40k. Shout out to For Feel No Pain that everyone else can have but us. So not too surprised, but that was a really good World Eaters list, and that's the person who actually won the event. So that happens, stuff can't beat everybody. Now, but in fact, they went 4-1 Cult of Speed. It was good enough. For his fourth matchup, we have Slaanesh Demons are viable, which the list is called. And I've heard this before, so let's see, mostly because Keeper of Secrets, I'm going to say. We have the Mask of Slaanesh as the Warlord, followed by 2 Keepers of Secrets, 4 units of Demonettes, 2 Seekers, a Fiend, and then 3 Soul Grinders, Slaanesh Soul Grinders. It's funny because I think this soul grinders in general, regardless of what god mark they take, I guess they're not as needed in Khorne, but they greatly benefit from being in any of these. Soul grinders are just awesome. They can shoot. They have 2 different melee unit profiles that they do that are well as multi-purpose. They have invulns. They're tough, not too expensive. So I really much like the soul grinders. I don't know about Slaanesh, but I like the soul grinders. Of course, this list just simply comes down to, like I said before, they're trying to kill you. What they're killing you is expensive, and everything else is cheap. We have a lot of stuff that's cheap, and we can actually meet them with the speed and the Cult of Speed. But I'm not going to act like I could pull this off. I'm just saying that's the understanding, right? We're doing this to understand how these players may be faced, what choices they made, and why they made the decisions they made with their list building. It's up to us as the pilots and fellow orc players to figure out if we can run that too. Very close game though, 11 points, which means he's right here. The Slaanesh guy had 9. Very close, almost a tie in that case. And then for his last matchup, last but certainly not least, he went into the Adeptus Custodes. Having a bunch of Deffkoptas guys with Twin Link and you're -2, and you're like, you don't have Armor of Contempt, buddy. That makes a big difference, right? The reason we hate that we only have AP -2 against 2-up armor saves units is because a lot of the time our units that have 2-up armor saves are also the same armies that have Armor of Contempt. Shout out to these Voltan's annoying self, Mini Marines. But Adeptus Custodes simply don't have that, meaning all of our random damage 3 that comes from even the Megatrack Scrapjet, the Deffkoptas get great value here. So what normally they have as a great benefit with these Blade Champions and Trajan Valoris aren't going to look as beneficial here. Now we have 1 unit of Guardians with Spears, and then 3 units of Alaris Custodian Terminators and 2-man units. Now, having that many Grots, having infiltrators, having that much speed, having reactive moves, having big bases, having big unit counts that are not too expensive, makes it so even these 2 dudes are going to have these 2-man units are going to have a hard time coming in, which I kind of like, right? Like I said, having those 2 units of Grots, 3 units of Grots, that's pretty much what they're more for if they're not standing on the front lines to like absorb a World Eater's charge. Then we have 1 unit of Cladius Grav Tank, followed by 2 fat bricks of Wardens with spears and a Vexilla, followed by a Prosecutor and 1 Venerable Land Raider. And this was the Shield Host. But like I said here, for the Custode matchup, the fact that the Terminators necessarily are boring, they want to sit in Deep Strike. Okay. If they don't, then they're just 2-man units that are running around hoping to get dwindled. And then we have the Gladius Grav Tank, which hasn't have good high value targets here, right? You got a Blade of Wounds with all the Deffkoptas, a Blade of Wounds with all the bikers, and then 80-point def mega crab jets. I mean, you have to kill all 3 of them to get his points back. So, in other matchups, and a lot of the time, the Cladius Grav Tank matters because it's popping our trucks and allowing us to get counter charge in our battle wagons. In this case, he can just hide the one truck that actually matters, and this guy loses a bunch of target valuability. Not to mention that truck now can make its way up the field and punch the crap out of you if this dude messes up to line up to Cladius once. And these Venerable Land Raider, which a lot of the time they just use to kind of decide they're going to try to bully you mid-table alongside their Wardens, right? And what we've seen when we've seen people train, not surprisingly, but just keep in mind, this Venerable Land Raider is not easy for Kult of Speed to kill, even if they put multiple units of Deffkoptas in. That's where something like My Knobs can run up and help finish you off with punching you to death. Helps. Megatron Scrapjet running in to charge you as well to get free mortal wounds, hopefully from its drill, helps as well. So whenever you're trying to kill something that's really durable with the Kult of Speed, just know it does require combined arms. It does require maybe a grenade. It does require you to understand where your mortal wounds are coming from. It does require you to know that you need some punching and shooting, because no one phase is really going to do it with Kult of Speed, because killing isn't really its thing. But scoring and delaying scoring is what it does. And then here it did a great job getting 18 points into that Custodes list. So shout out to David for bringing love to the Kult of Speed. So one last check before we go. We have Coptas Buggies list. 2 units of Death Killer War Trikes, 1 with Squig Tires, 1 with Waz Blasta, a War Boss with Faster Than News, 1 truck for that War Boss, a Daka Jet, 3 max unit of Deffkoptas, because that's the backbone to any true Kult of Speed, 3 minimum sized units of cults, 1 commando unit, not to mention the commando unit had a breacher, burner, a rocket, and then 6 dudes had Choppa Sluggas. The Knob had the Power Claw. 3 units of Megatrack Scrap Jets for those nice mortal wounds. And a lot of the time, guys, your buggies are going to actually be behind your Coptas, like hiding and staging, coming out to just run and do mortals, fill up space so that people can't ingress or deep strike on you, or they're absorbing a charge or move blocking. They're not necessarily, I'm the front line trying to do the damage. I'm on the front line trying to win you the game. They're like, I'm the expendable 80-point asset that can be used to get in the way, assist in killing, get lucky, blah, blah, blah. 1 big unit of Knobs with Power Claws, followed by 1 big brick of War Bikers, and then a 3-man unit of War Bikers. Like I said, surprised there wasn't more, but overall the list is well-rounded. Like I said, don't understand the Docker Jet, so if our boy David ever comes across this, let us know how you use that. Very interested in that. If you're running Kult of Speed, only modification I ever say for New York players, just Docker Jet, go for more bikers, and you'll be happy about that. So shout out to our boy David for making great success with the Kult of Speed. Whoa, for our war boss. All right, Gits. So now I'm going to go over the comments real quick and some closing thoughts. So say what else you got to say before we get off. We have Dakajet is interesting. I'm surprised he didn't take something else like Commandos. I wonder how I used them. He did take Commandos. Maybe you were listening and you didn't, I didn't get to that point yet before you commented, but thanks for commenting. But I agree. I'm surprised he didn't just simply take more War Bikers, right? Vito, what's up, buddy? With the squig war. Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. Thanks for using the emojis. I love that. Hey, wow, made it final. I finally made it for a live stream. Yeah, let's go, nuts. We have Wicked Joe with the Death Dreads. Whoa, for Aaron and Wicked Joe. Oh, Cardinal Jake, what's up, buddy? I haven't seen you before, but I see you're a member. What's good? Whoa. All right, everybody. So it seems like everybody's pretty happy. And what's up, Jank Tank? I love to see that you guys are all camaraderie and familiar with each other. That's what I'm talking about in the Great WAAAGH, my boys. That's what I'm talking about. So with that all being said, boys, Orks, yes. For the general player base and where a lot of people lie, our stats are all over the place. Could be because people are memeing, because shout out memes are fun as an orc player. Yeah. But it's also people are trying to find their way with what works and what doesn't. So we try to make our way around here to try to get a general consensus, help kind of have people have tools or know what works, because not everybody plays hyper competitively. So we like to see, what do you go with? What does your local meta go with? And what are the top players kind of all having a consensus on what works, what doesn't, and what do they love. So like I always say, don't copy, go for what you are. I respect you as your own individual war boss and what you think, play, and understanding of your meta. This is just to help you accentuate your trains of thoughts and your way of thinking. And competitive players don't really dictate everything for how your personal games are going to go. So it's not biblical. Don't ever listen to simply me or someone else. I respect you for the war boss you is. Oh, interesting, Joe. He said, will there be a Space Marine Live 2 stream edition upon release? If enough people ask for it. I mean, it's not a Space Marine list, but it is Warhammer. So, I'm open to it. I just don't know if people really care, because I'm not an orc player, or not a Space Marine, and it's an orc channel. But I'm open. So yeah, thanks for asking. And remember, guys, it's every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. And every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Central U.S. Standard Time. So I appreciate you gets. And there's always one thing to keep in mind, is don't cross a wall, because we knock your teeth out.